All right, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai, Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakha Kudash. I want to give double honors to our apostles, great millstone who rule well, and peace and blessings to the house of David the elect. All right, I'm Zahab, Spirit Wind Judah, Shalak. And today I want to go into a lesson, just going into more of an extension of what I spoke on a few days ago about basically we reclaiming our manhood, all right, through the word, which is for rulership, all right. And what I want to touch on briefly is um specifically how we ruled in our homeland Jerusalem, which is far different from how we're living now. See, we're not ruling anything, all right. We're just living, all right. Esau set up a corporate prison where you basically drink your water for money. You buy your wood is sold unto you. All right, it's just a tech savvy age that we live in. Okay, so I'm just gonna start out with how we maneuvered in the ancient world. Being in a position of rulership, or dealing with servants, or a distinction between uh hired servants and bond servants. So I'm just gonna get Leviticus. You know what? Before I get Leviticus, I'm just gonna open up with Sirach 33 and 33 and 24. Fodder, a wand, and burdens are for the ass, and bread, correction, and work for a servant. All right. And it says, verse 25, if thou set thy servant to labor, thou shalt find rest. But if thou let him go idle, he shall seek liberty. We're going back to verse 24. It says, fodder. Fodder is food. It's food that you give your farm animals. A wand, I believe that's a guiding stick. All right. And burdens are for the ass. And the ass is basically known for carrying heavy loads. All right. Today you will have something called a work truck. All right. But in the ancient world and even in third world societies, right, their ass or their donkey is like a work truck. Also, we did a lot of traveling in the Middle East. All right. And an ass would basically be like for packing your household goods when you transfer from one piece of land to another. All right. So a donkey would be like a U-Haul truck in the ancient world, or to be a work truck. All right. Depending on what you had going on in your situation. All right. But it says, fodder, a wand, and burdens are for the ass, and bread, correction, and work for a servant. So I did some research, going through the scriptures, all right? And basically, you had, as an Israelite man, as a ruler of your estate, you had different situations for different servants, all right? Because you did have Israelite servants, and you did have straight up bond servants, and there's a difference, all right? But all of these are rights that you have as a ruler of a domain. Okay. And I mentioned the ass because an ass is another asset to your domain, right? Because of its how you can utilize it. Okay. So from there, all right, I'm going to get Leviticus 25, and I'm just going to start at 39, which this whole chapter is really good. All right, pertaining to this lesson. All right, Leviticus 25 and 39. And if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxen poor, and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant. All right. But it says, if thy brother that dwelleth by thee be waxen poor. So he's poor, or he can't keep up with his goods or his estate. So he has to basically put himself in a form of employment, all right, to build his money back up, all right, over a period of time. All right, it says, and be sold unto thee, thou shalt not compel him to serve as a bondservant, all right, but as a hired servant. All right, so let's see what it says. Let's see what it says when I look up the root of bondservant. All right, as a bondservant, abide, which that's where you get Obadiah from. Abide. All right, it says slave, servant. All right. So thou shalt not hire him as a slave, all right, but as a hired servant. Okay. Let me go to which that's pretty self-explanatory, hired servant. But I'm just going to get another translation just to bring it into context of today. It says, this is the New Living Translation, Leviticus 25 and 39. If one of your fellow Israelites fall into poverty and is forced to sell himself to you, do not treat him as a slave. Verse 40. Treat him instead as a hired worker or as a temporary resident who lives with you, and he will serve you only until the year of Jubilee. And after the year of Jubilee, he's basically let go. Okay. All right. And so basically, if an Israelite gets into debt, he has to get his way out of debt. And the way he gets himself out of debt is through working for you for a wage. Now, according to the scripture, man works and receive his wage in the evening. And you had basically contracts where you would work for a certain amount of years, man. But there was a system that helped Jake get his wealth up, man. Okay. All right. Because he has a family to feed. It says, verse 40, but as a hired servant and as a sojourner, he shall be with thee, and he shall serve thee until the year of Jubilee. And then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with him, and he shall return unto his own family, unto the possession of his father shall he return. All right? Unto the possession of his fathers. And let's get that word possession. All right, because that's a very important word when it comes to our heritage. All right? Because the Most High is all about, giving rights to a land, specifically the rights to Abraham, all right? And ultimately the rights of Israel, his descendants, to a particular land. But this is the way of the ancient world. It says possession, property, possession by inheritance. And I'm going to also get the New Living Translation for that particular scripture, all right, to build up to a point. It says, wait a minute, didn't mean to go that way. All right, go back. All right. Get up out of there. All right. Let me see. Where am I? Leviticus. It says, but as a hired servant, verse 40, but as a hired servant and a sojourner, he shall be with thee and shall serve thee until the year of Jubilee. And then shall he depart from thee, both he and his children with him, and shall return unto his family, and unto the possession of his father shall return. All right. I'm going to get that in the New Living Translation. All right, to the possession of his father shall he return. Leviticus 25. All right, Leviticus 25 and 41. And at that time, he and his children will no longer be obligated to you, and they will return to their clans and go back to the land originally allotted to their ancestors. This is where you get the term birthright from. All right, and this is the power of being a man, all right, and a ruler of your domain. All right, so how do you get your domain? Let's get that in. First, I'm going to get the definition of domain. It says in a free dictionary, a territory over which rule or control is exercised. All right. Domain goes back to lord, all right, or property. Basically, a lord over a particular property. All right. So then I'm going to go back to the etymology. I'm going to get the word patrimony, because that's what this is dealing with. All right, the land allotted to their fathers. So you had an Israelite he was an Israelite, but he wasn't from that particular land that you were in. All right, and he was in debt, and he worked for you for a certain amount of years, all right, to get his money, all right, get his money up. All right, but then after the year of Jubilee, he was no longer obligated to work with you, but then he went back to a land where he had a birthright, all right, a land that was allotted to his ancestors. All right, that's the purpose of having a lineage. All right, it says patrimony. All right, property of the church, spiritual legacy of who they call Christ. All right, but then it goes into heritage, patrimony, and directly from Latin, patrimonium, a paternal estate. All right, inheritance from a father. All right, inheritance from a father. So in the Blue Letter Bible, in the New Living Translation, where it says that they would go back to the land originally allotted to their ancestors, all right? Meaning that they actually had land, all right, that they had a right to, man, all right? All right, and that's the right or the privilege of being an Israelite servant for another Israelite. All right, it says verse 22. Well, let me go back to the King James 1 second. All right, this is the power of being in a sovereign land. All right, this is how we deal with things when Esau is not in our fucking face, man. All right, you as an Israelite man, you have a lineage going back to your ancestors, and we have a land going back to our ancestors. And for us, it's the land of Israel, man. We have a birthright to that land, all right, which we've been ousted from that land by the Most High because of our transgressions, but we'll get that. But I just want to read furthermore. It says Leviticus 25, and 42. All right, for they are my servants, which I brought forth out of the land of Egypt, talking about the Israelites that you recently freed. They shall not be sold as bondmen. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor, but shall fear thy power. So in Leviticus, the 33rd chapter, where it goes into how you how you deal with your servant, all right, where it says Sirach 33 and 26, a yoke and a collar do bow the neck. So are the tortures and torments for an evil servant. And ultimately, that's for those heathen. All right, those heathen, because it goes on to say in verse 30, if thou have a servant, let him be unto thee as thyself, because thou hast bought him with the price. And that's how you would treat an Israelite servant. But keep in mind, he's a temporary servant, man, like an indentured servant. All right. If thou have a servant and treat him as a brother, for thou hast need of him as of thy own soul. And the way you would treat him as a brother, all right, because he is your brother, all right, because he's a wage servant, man, all right, or if he's not a wage servant, or he's basically under a contract to work with you for a particular period of time, so basically he gets some type of sustenance for himself, man, all right, and that's a system, all right, that's almost that's a system to keep everybody in Israel basically wealthy, man. All right. For thou hast need of him as of thy own soul. If thou entreat him evil and he run from thee, which way wilt thou go to seek him? All right. So there's a difference between a hired servant and a bond servant, man. Okay. Going back to Leviticus. All right. Leviticus 25 and 43. Thou shalt not rule over him with vigor, but shall fear thy power. Both the bondmen and the bondmaids which thou shalt have shall be of the heathen. So the slave men and the slave women that you should have, they should be of the heathen. So you don't really keep Israelite men as slaves. All right, you keep them as hired service. But the heathen, this is how you treat them. Both the bondmen and the bondmaids which thou shalt have shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids. All right. So you can straight up buy slaves, man. And we're going to go back to that, man. All right. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them shall ye buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possession. And here's the point, verse 46. And ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you. All right, that's what you call a birthright. That's what you call having a domain. All right, that's what you call having an estate. So you have slaves, right? And your slaves have children. So let's say you go back to the spirit world, you die, and your slaves die. Well, guess what? You have actually something to pass down to your descendants. And what is that? Their descendants, man. That's how you have that's how you have a rulership, man. All right, this is beautiful. All right, the Most High has systems to create wealth in Israel, man. And ye shall take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them for a possession. They should be your bondmen forever. But over your brethren, the children of Israel, you should not rule one over another with rigor. All right. So, and that's pretty much the point. All right, pertaining to rulership and having servants. All right, for me, it feels good just to read scriptures like this. All right. Let me get another scripture. All right, I'm gonna get Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, chapter 9, just to get an example of what we dealt with when we had our own land. All right. Nehemiah chapter 9, I think it's verse 5. Actually, it might be verse 25. All right. Nehemiah 9 and 24. All right. So the children went in, and it's talking about Israel. When we went to possess the land of Israel. At that time, it's called the land of Canaan. All right. Nehemiah 9 and 24. The children went in and possessed the land, and thou subduest before them the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, and gavest them into their hands with their kings and the people of the land, that they might do with them as they would. And they took strong cities, talking about Israel, and a fat land. All right, it's called the land of milk and honey, and possess houses full of all goods, wells dig. Yeah, because when you take over a land, you have to be in the vicinity of water. And what you would do, you would find where the water is under the land, and you would dig a hole, all right, to tap into the water and create a water well to make it accessible to get water. All right. And they took strong cities and a fat land and possessed houses full of all goods, wells digged, vineyards and olive yards, and fruit trees in abundance. So they did eat and were filled and became fat and delighted themselves in thy great goodness. All right. And that's pretty much the point, man. We just didn't have land and we were just poor farmers. No, we were living good, man. All right. Because that's the accolade of having a right to a land. And your last name, see, in Babylon, your last name goes back to your possessors, all right, because you were a possession to them. And your offspring was automatically their possession. All right. But in the kingdom, it's going to be reversed, man. All right. And that's the time we're coming into. All right. That's the time we're coming into, man. All right. Trading places, man. Let me get that. Revelations 13. The good old faithful scripture. Revelations 13:9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. This book is all about rulership, man. All right. This book is all about rulership. All right. And it's okay, all right, to be a slave. It's okay to have slaves. All right. It's just your turn to be that slave. All right. That's it. Let me get this scripture right quick. Let me just pull it up. Sometimes you'll try to pull up the scripture, but you get the wrong words. Whose captives they were, King James. Yep, there's Isaiah 42:2. Isaiah 42:2. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. All right? And let me just get that in this little app right here. And that's what we're coming into. That's the times that we're coming into. Isaiah 42, move it out the way, and 1. All right, Isaiah 42:1. Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my elect, and whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him, and he shall bring forth judgment unto the Gentiles. So that wasn't Isaiah 14:2. Salak Akim. Isaiah 14:1. All right, Isaiah 14:1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them. They shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. What is their place? Is Israel, the land in which we have a right through our ancestors, man. A right that was given to us by the privilege to the promise based on our ancestors, our forefathers, man. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over them. And that's going to start with Esau, Edom, man. Esau, Edom, hey, boy, man, we got to tame you, man. We gotta tame you, man. And you're a wild animal that's in rulership, and we got to put you under a heavy fucking burden, man. All right? That's why it tells you that them strong burdens are for those evil servants, man. You're an evil servant, man, so you're gonna need strong burdens, man. All right? And that's pretty much the point. All right? Verse 3, and it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou was made to serve. And the hard bondage was the 400 years of America, man, where we were captives and where we were bond men and bond women sold on auction blocks, broken down to the spirit of animals, man. All right? Taking our independence away, man. All right, one of the punishment of coming to America is that you have no right to the earth. You have no allotted ownership to the earth. All right? Therefore, you have nothing to pass down to your offspring but debt. But I hope you brothers are edified. I want to give all honor and glory to you. How about Shema Shai? By Hashem Kakudash, double honors to our apostles, great millstone, Ruel. Peace and blessing to the house of David the elect. Abba, come Shalom.